She's not coming back because you explained yourself. She's not returning because you chased, argued, or tried to prove your worth. She's coming back because life did the teaching for you. Somewhere along the way, reality showed her what she lost, and more importantly, what she hasn't been able to replace. When the noise fades and comparisons begin, rarity becomes obvious. Your calm absence didn't punish her. It revealed the truth she couldn't see when you were still there. In this video, we're going to explore why that realization happens, how life creates the contrast that brings her back, and why your silence spoke louder than any words ever could. If this message resonates with you, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's begin. Number 1. The illusion of options faded. At first, she genuinely believed you were replaceable. Not because you lacked value, but because modern dating sells the idea that attention is endless and connection is easy to find. A swipe here, a message there, a new face every week. In the beginning, that felt empowering to her. It felt like freedom. But as time passed, the excitement wore off and reality started to surface. Conversations felt shallow. Promises felt inconsistent. Emotional energy felt scattered and unstable. The men she met could show interest, but they couldn't offer presence. They could talk, but they couldn't listen. They could pursue, but they couldn't stand still with confidence. This is when comparison quietly began. Not in a dramatic way, but in small, uncomfortable moments. When someone reacted emotionally to things you handled calmly. When someone chased validation instead of purpose. When attention felt loud but empty. What once seemed normal started to feel cheap compared to the steadiness you brought into her life. She didn't miss constant messages. She missed how grounded she felt around you. And that's not something abundance can replace. There's a Stoic lesson hidden here. Epictetus accepted exile without resistance, saying, "Very well, I shall go." He understood that what is forced to stay has no value, and what leaves with dignity leaves a mark. Your departure carried that same quiet strength. You didn't argue for your worth. You didn't compete with the illusion of options. You simply stepped away, whole and unmoved. And that's why life itself had to become the teacher. Now, through contrast, she's learning what she lost. Not because you reminded her, not because you chased her attention, but because rarity reveals itself only after it's gone. When chaos replaces calm, when noise replaces depth, when availability replaces presence. And that realization is what brings her back, not curiosity, not loneliness, but the slow, undeniable understanding that what you offered wasn't common. It was rare. Number 2. Your absence created contrast. You didn't need to argue your worth. You simply disappeared. And that created space for contrast between you and everyone else. While others tried harder, talked more, explained themselves, you did none of that. You stepped back quietly, and in doing so, you let life do the comparing for you. That's something a lot of people underestimate. When you remove yourself without bitterness or drama, what remains becomes very clear. Noise reveals itself as noise. Calm reveals itself as substance. At first, she didn't notice it. Life filled the gap quickly. New conversations, new attention, familiar patterns dressed up as novelty. But over time, something felt off. The energy wasn't steady. The words didn't carry weight. The connection felt reactive, not grounded. And that's when contrast begins to work. Not because you're trying to be remembered, but because your presence had a certain quality that can't be replicated easily. You didn't rush. You didn't chase. You didn't need to be impressive. You were consistent in a way that felt safe and real. This is where Stoicism quietly enters the picture. The Stoics believed that what is truly valuable doesn't need to announce itself. Epictetus taught that character shows most clearly in what a person does without being watched. Your absence reflected that. You didn't leave to provoke longing. You left because you respected your own center. And that self-respect is rare. When someone lives from that place, their absence doesn't feel empty. It feels noticeable. Think about Diogenes, walking through the city in daylight with a lamp, saying he was searching for an honest man. Most people laughed. But the point wasn't the lamp, it was the scarcity. Real integrity was hard to find. In the same way, your absence became her lamp. Without you there, she started seeing more clearly what was missing. Not just you, but the steadiness you brought into her life. The calm that didn't fluctuate. The presence that didn't need constant reassurance. Now, when she looks back, it's not nostalgia that pulls her. It's contrast. Life has shown her that what felt ordinary with you was actually rare. And that realization doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives quietly, often when she least expects it. That's why she's coming back, not because you convinced her, but because reality did. Before we move on, take a moment to sit with what you just heard. This isn't about proving a point or waiting for a reaction. It's about understanding the quiet power of choosing yourself. Ask yourself where you've been explaining, reacting, or trying to be understood, and what might change if you simply stepped back into your own center. Reflection is where real clarity begins. If this resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments. What part of this contrast stood out to you, or what have you noticed change when you stopped trying to be seen? Number 3, life humbled her expectations. At first, she chased the thrill because she believed that's what love was supposed to feel like: intense, consuming, always on edge. She wanted sparks, unpredictability, the rush of being pulled into something emotionally loud. And for a moment, that kind of connection felt exciting. New attention arrived easily. Conversations moved fast. Everything felt charged. But life has a way of revealing what excitement hides. Those highs didn't lead to depth. They led to confusion, mixed signals, and emotional fatigue. The fire she chased kept burning, but it never warmed her. It just left ash behind. As the noise settled, something unexpected happened. She started remembering how it felt with you. Not in a dramatic, romanticized way, but in quiet moments when there was nothing distracting her. She remembered how your presence didn't demand emotional performance, how being around you felt stable, grounded, almost effortless. Back then, she thought that calm meant something was missing. Now she understands it meant something was solid. She compared the instability she was living with to the consistency you offered. And for the first time, the contrast became impossible to ignore. This is where life begins to teach its hardest lessons. You don't appreciate peace until you've lived without it. You don't recognize emotional safety until you've been unsettled long enough to crave it. The men she encountered after you might have been exciting, charming, or intense, but they weren't anchored. And over time, that lack of grounding started to wear on her. That's when she realized you weren't ordinary. You were rare. Cleanthes worked through the night carrying water so he could afford to study philosophy during the day. He chose discipline over comfort because he understood that real value is built quietly, over time. You did something similar. You endured heartbreak without collapsing into resentment or chasing distractions to numb the pain. You didn't beg for understanding or try to prove your worth. You evolved. You refined yourself. You became more grounded, more composed, more whole. And a man like that humbles fantasy without ever confronting it. He doesn't argue with illusion. He outlasts it. So when she thinks about coming back, it isn't because the thrill failed her for a moment. It's because life showed her the difference between temporary excitement and lasting substance. Between noise and presence. Between men who burn bright and disappear. and a man whose steadiness remains long after he's gone. And now, she's returning with a deeper awareness, not because you waited, but because you didn't. Number 4. You stayed rare by not returning. Most people fold under pressure. Most come back when tested. But you didn't. And that decision is far heavier than any words you could have said. Your silence wasn't cold, and it wasn't strategic. It was conclusive. It came from knowing who you are and refusing to bargain with your self-respect. While others would have rushed back the moment uncertainty appeared, you stayed still, grounded, whole. And that stillness carried a finality she didn't understand at first, but she felt it. At the time, she may have mistaken your absence for indifference or pride. She assumed silence meant waiting, or that eventually you'd circle back like everyone else. But life has a way of exposing those assumptions. As time passed, she encountered people who talked endlessly but stood for nothing, who reacted emotionally but lacked depth, who were available yet unstable. And slowly, without you being present, comparison did the work. She began to see that what you offered wasn't loud affection or dramatic attachment. It was emotional, safety, consistency, and restraint, things that are only recognized once they're gone. This is where Stoicism quietly lives beneath the surface. Seneca wrote, "He who fears death will never do anything worthy of a man who is alive." You feared no loss, not losing her, not losing the past, not losing the version of yourself that once tried harder than necessary. That freedom made you dangerous in the best way, because you weren't controlled by outcomes. You didn't beg. You didn't negotiate. You didn't explain yourself into exhaustion. You trusted that what was meant to stay would not require you to abandon yourself. Life kept placing her in situations that highlighted the difference. Moments where calm was missing, where words were empty, where attention felt cheap, and in those moments, your memory didn't arrive with longing alone. It arrived with respect. Because you didn't leave behind chaos or confusion. You left behind a standard, a quiet example of a man who could walk away without bitterness and still move forward intact. So when she thinks about you now, it's not nostalgia pulling her back. It's recognition. She's coming back because life has been teaching her, day by day, that men like you aren't common. They don't return on impulse. They don't stay where they're not valued. They don't need to announce their strength. They simply live it. And once life shows her how rare that is, the absence you chose becomes impossible to ignore. Number 5. Her reflection changed without your reaction. She used to read herself in your eyes, how you looked at her, how you replied, how quickly you reacted when she shifted the dynamic. Your attention wasn't just affection, it was feedback. It told her who she was in the moment and how much influence she had. When she pulled away, when she tested the space, your response always completed the loop. That's how the reflection worked. When that mirror disappeared, she didn't simply lose contact with you. She lost a familiar way of understanding herself, and that kind of loss is subtle but deeply unsettling. At first, she minimized it. She told herself it didn't matter, that your silence was temporary, that eventually you'd respond the way you always had, checking in, adjusting, reacting. She assumed your calm was just another phase, another pause before things returned to normal. But days turned into weeks, and nothing came. No emotional check-ins, no curiosity, no quiet attempts to pull her back into focus. That's when the reflection truly began to change. Without your reactions, shaping the moment, she was left alone with questions she'd never needed to ask before. Was she still desired? Still influential? Still able to move someone emotionally just by shifting her tone or her distance? When you were there, those answers felt automatic. Without you, they became uncertain. And uncertainty has a way of echoing in silence. Life then stepped in to finish the lesson. She met new people, had new conversations, received new attention. On the surface, it looked fine, but something was missing. The depth felt thin. The energy felt unstable. There was noise, but no grounding. That's when an uncomfortable realization surfaced. Your presence didn't just validate her, it anchored her. You didn't exaggerate her, chase her, or project fantasies onto her. You saw her clearly, and that clarity gave her emotional balance, even when she didn't recognize it at the time. Hierocles spoke about the circles of concern, how a person must begin with the self and expand outward, rather than collapsing their identity into another's reactions. Without announcing it, without making a statement, you lived that principle. You stopped orbiting her emotional center and returned to your own. You reclaimed your inner ground, and the moment you did that, you stopped being a mirror she could adjust, test, or rely on for reassurance. That absence forced her to face herself without the stabilizing reflection you once provided. And that's why this moment lingers so strongly in her mind. Not because you disappeared in anger, not because you demanded anything, but because your calm withdrawal removed something rare, someone who reflected her without distortion, without need, without instability. This is why she comes back. Not because you chased, not because you explained, but because life, in your absence, revealed what you truly were. You didn't just want her, you reflected her with steadiness and clarity. And once that reflection was gone, she finally understood its value. Take a moment to let this land. What changed here wasn't something you announced or explained, it was something you embodied. The moment you stopped reacting, stopped completing the loop, the entire dynamic shifted on its own. If this part resonates with you, support the video by tapping like and share your thoughts in the comments about what stood out most. Or, if you prefer, simply type, "Detachment makes me stronger." Acknowledging that shift matters, and it sets the stage for what comes next. Number 6, she saw what emotional safety really was. She mistook calm for boring, stability for routine. But now, after enough emotional roller coasters, enough highs that quickly turned into confusion and disappointment, your predictability feels priceless to her. At the time, she believed love had to feel intense to be real. She thought uncertainty meant passion, and that emotional swings were proof of connection. Life, however, has a way of stripping those illusions away. After dealing with inconsistency, half-effort, and people who disappear the moment things require depth, she's starting to understand what you were actually offering. You weren't dramatic. You didn't create tension just to feel alive. You showed up the same way on easy days and difficult ones. You were steady when emotions ran high. You were present without needing to perform. And that kind of presence is invisible to someone who hasn't yet been worn down by chaos. But now she has. Now she's felt what it's like to always guess where she stands, to feel anxious instead of grounded, to crave reassurance instead of peace. And that's when your absence starts to speak. Think about how this lands for her. She remembers conversations with you that felt simple but sincere. Moments where she didn't feel rushed, judged, or emotionally pulled in different directions. With you, she could relax her guard. Emotional safety doesn't create fireworks, it creates space. Space to breathe, space to think clearly, space to be herself without constantly adjusting. And once life takes that away and replaces it with instability, the value of that space becomes impossible to ignore. Musonius Rufus warned that external charm, without internal virtue, is hollow. You didn't charm her with intensity or emotional games. You grounded her with consistency, patience, and restraint. You didn't escalate drama or withdraw to gain control. You stayed aligned with yourself. At the time, that strength felt quiet, almost ordinary. But Stoicism teaches that true strength is often silent, because it doesn't need validation to exist. You embodied that without announcing it. Now, life is showing her the contrast. Every unreliable interaction sharpens the memory of your steadiness. Every emotional letdown reminds her of how safe it felt with you. And that's why she's coming back. Not because you chased her, not because you tried to convince her of your value, but because experience taught her what words never could. She's realizing that what she once dismissed as boring was actually rare emotional maturity. And that kind of safety is something life doesn't offer twice very easily. Number 7. Your standards didn't bend. And that's something life keeps reminding her of now. Back then, she may have seen your boundaries as stubborn or unnecessary. She tested them in quiet ways, pulling back to see if you'd chase, crossing small lines to see if you'd tolerate it, creating moments where it would have been easy for you to compromise just to keep the connection alive. A late reply meant to provoke anxiety. A bit of distance meant to make you lean in harder. And for a while, she expected you to do what most people do: adjust yourself, lower the bar, explain, justify, or accept less just to stay close. But you didn't. You didn't bargain with your self-respect. You didn't silence your values to avoid discomfort. You didn't tell yourself, "It's fine," when something inside you knew it wasn't. Instead of bending, you stayed steady. And, at the time, that probably felt unimpressive to her. Calm can look unremarkable when someone is used to emotional chaos. Integrity doesn't make noise. It doesn't chase attention. It just stands there, quiet and unmovable. Now fast forward. Life has put other people in front of her, men who say the right things but don't mean them, who bend their values depending on the situation, who promise stability but abandon it the moment it costs them something. And in those moments, she remembers you. Not your words, your consistency, the way you didn't need to threaten, manipulate, or perform to hold your ground, the way your no was calm and your yes actually meant something. Cato, the younger, believed that integrity was non-negotiable, even when compromise would have made life easier. He understood that once you surrender your principles, you don't gain peace, you lose yourself. You lived that in a modern, quieter way. You didn't stay where respect was optional. You didn't chase closeness at the expense of your core. And now, life is showing her how rare that actually was. That's why she feels the pull back. Not because you argued your value, but because you never abandoned it. You showed, without speeches or ultimatums, what it looks like when a man chooses dignity over convenience. And once someone experiences the absence of that, they don't forget it easily. Now, pause for a second, because this is where the realization hits the hardest. When someone expects your values to bend and they don't, it leaves an echo. And that echo is what she's hearing now. Life didn't give her another version of you. It gave her tests. And every time someone else fails them, your quiet strength becomes clearer. If you've ever held the line when it would have been easier to fold, share your thoughts below or simply type, "My calm has meaning." Let's keep going. Number 8. The world didn't give her another you. And that realization didn't hit all at once. It crept in quietly, through small disappointments and subtle comparisons. She met new faces, heard familiar lines, felt short sparks of excitement, but something was always missing. The conversations felt lighter, the presence less steady. People tried to impress her, tried to sell her a version of themselves, but none of it carried the same weight. That's when she started to notice the difference. You never needed to convince her of who you were. You showed up as yourself, consistently, without performance. And once you've experienced that kind of grounded presence, everything else feels thin. You weren't louder than the rest. You didn't demand attention. You didn't create chaos to feel alive. You were calm in a way that didn't ask for validation. And now that she's out in the world, dealing with uncertainty, mixed signals, and emotional inconsistency, she's beginning to understand what she took for granted. It's not that others are bad or lacking. It's that what you offered wasn't common. It was real. And real is rare because it requires a man to be at peace with himself before he ever tries to connect with someone else. Chrysippus taught that to live well is to live according to nature, not opinion. You lived that without announcing it. You didn't shape yourself around what she wanted in the moment or what would earn approval. You acted from your own center. That's why your presence felt solid. That's why it didn't fluctuate with moods or circumstances. And that's exactly what she can't find again, no matter how many options appear in front of her. So if you're watching this and wondering why she's starting to drift back into your orbit, understand this. Life is doing the teaching for you. Through contrast, through absence, through experience. She's learning that authenticity isn't flashy, but it endures. And when someone has once felt that kind of steadiness, the world doesn't easily offer a replacement. Number 9. Your growth became visible. You didn't seek revenge. You didn't post to be seen. But somehow, your evolution reached her. And that's how it usually happens. Real growth doesn't announce itself. It leaks through presence. Through the way you carry yourself now. Through the calm in your eyes when you speak, the steadiness in your body language, the fact that you no longer rush to explain or prove anything. Even if she only crossed paths with you briefly, or heard about you secondhand, she could feel the difference. Something about you no longer felt unfinished or reactive. You looked grounded, as if your life had found its rhythm again, without needing her to keep the beat. From her side, this is unsettling in a quiet way. She remembers the version of you that was available, open, emotionally invested. And now she's faced with someone who seems fuller, more self-contained, more intentional. You're not louder, you're not colder, you're simply more solid. And that contrast forces a realization she can't avoid. Life didn't break you when she left. It refined you. While others talk about healing, you embodied it. While others perform growth, you lived it. Zeno lost everything in a shipwreck and didn't chase what was gone. He treated loss as raw material. From that destruction, he built a philosophy that still stands centuries later. You did the same in your own way. You didn't try to rebuild the relationship. You rebuilt yourself. Stronger habits, clearer boundaries, a quieter confidence that doesn't need applause. And that's what life is now showing her. She isn't looking at the man she once walked away from. She's looking at the man who emerged because she did. That's why this hits her differently. Growth without bitterness is rare. Progress without performance is rare. A man who turns pain into discipline instead of resentment is rare. And when life puts that contrast in front of her, when she sees who you became instead of who you were, it becomes impossible to unsee. That's when she starts to feel it. Not regret fueled by loneliness, but recognition fueled by clarity. Because life didn't just move on. It showed her, quietly and unmistakably, that what she lost wasn't replaceable. Number 10. Time made her memory clearer. Time doesn't just soften emotions. It strips away illusion. When the tension faded and the emotional static went quiet, what remained wasn't doubt or confusion, it was truth. Distance gave her something she didn't have before. Perspective. Without constant interaction, without arguments to focus on, without reassurance to lean on, she was left with the raw memory of who you actually were. And in that stillness, your presence began to stand out in ways it never could while you were there every day. The way you showed up without needing praise. The calm you carried even when things felt uncertain. The steadiness that didn't fluctuate with moods or circumstances. What once felt familiar now feels rare, almost sacred, because life has shown her how uncommon that kind of man truly is. You can see how this happens if you look at your own experiences. When something is always available, the mind takes it for granted. It's only in absence that value becomes sharp. As time passed, she didn't miss the routines or the habits as much as she missed the feeling of being grounded around you. She noticed how other connections felt louder but thinner, full of words but lacking weight. Attention came easily, but it didn't feel safe. Effort was offered, but it wasn't consistent. And slowly, without you ever needing to explain yourself, the comparison began. Life started doing the work you refused to do through persuasion. There's a quiet power in that. You didn't defend your character after you left. You didn't rewrite the story. You let time tell it honestly. Each new experience sharpened her memory of you, not in fantasy, but in contrast. She remembered how your silence never felt threatening, how your presence didn't need control, how being with you felt stable even in uncertainty. These aren't things people notice in the moment. They're things they recognize only after they're gone. Posidonius endured constant physical pain, yet continued to teach with clarity and composure, refusing to let suffering distort his understanding of truth. His circumstances didn't define his insight. His discipline did. You lived the same principle. You didn't beg for explanations. You didn't demand closure. You accepted loss without letting it harden you or cheapen you. And that choice mattered more than you realize. Because when time passed and emotions settled, your composure stood intact. The truth of who you were didn't fade, it sharpened. Now, her memory of you isn't blurred by emotion. It's clean, clear, undeniable. Life has shown her what inconsistency feels like, what emotional chaos looks like, what empty attention costs. And against that backdrop, you stand out without effort. Not as the man she lost in the moment, but as the man she understands too late. That's why she's coming back. Not because you waited, not because you chased, but because time revealed what you never tried to prove: you were rare. Let this settle for a second. There's a difference between being forgotten and being understood later, and time has a way of revealing which one was real. Think about the moments when you chose composure over explanation, silence over persuasion, and trusted distance to speak on your behalf. If this connects with you, leave a comment, sharing what stood out, or simply type, "Calm reveals truth." Number 11. She returned, but you're no longer waiting. And now she's circling back, not because of a sudden realization or some dramatic moment of clarity, but because life has a way of stripping illusions down to the bone. Over time, she was placed in situations that looked promising on the surface, but felt hollow underneath. Conversations that went nowhere, attention that felt loud but empty, connections that demanded energy without offering stability. And in those quiet moments of comparison, the truth surfaced on its own. What she once took for granted began to feel rare. But here's the part that matters most. You didn't pause your life for this realization to arrive. While she was learning through disappointment, you were learning through discipline. You didn't sit still, replaying old memories or waiting for a message that might never come. You redirected your energy into your routine, your health, your purpose, your sense of order. You became less reactive, less available to chaos, less willing to explain yourself, not out of anger, not out of pride, but because something in you settled. You stopped negotiating your worth internally. And that shift changes everything. Think about how different this feels now. In the past, her return might have felt like validation, like proof that you mattered. Today, it feels quieter than that. More measured. You're not rushing to respond. You're not rehearsing what to say. You're observing, calm, present, unmoved. And that's deeply disorienting to her, because she expected time and distance to soften you, maybe even make you more open to compromise. Instead, it refined you. Life didn't harden you, it clarified you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." She believed your silence was a barrier, something temporary she could eventually step around. She assumed you were stuck behind it, waiting. But for you, that same silence became forward motion. The loss forced you to confront yourself honestly. The absence removed distractions. The stillness revealed what you will and will not accept moving forward. So, yes, she's coming back, but not to reclaim what she left behind. She's coming back to face what she no longer has access to so easily. And the quiet truth is this: you're not standing where she left you. You've moved on, not away from her, but toward yourself. As you can see now, her return isn't the result of anything you said or did to persuade her. It's the outcome of time, contrast, and experience doing what words never could. Life showed her the difference between noise and presence, between excitement and stability, between men who perform and a man who stands firm in himself. Your silence wasn't a tactic, it was a boundary. Your absence wasn't punishment, it was clarity. And while she was learning through comparison, you were becoming more grounded, more disciplined, and more aligned with who you are. That's the quiet power in all of this. You didn't need to chase closure or validation, because you chose growth instead. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to like the video so it reaches others who need to hear it. Leave a comment below and let me know which part of this journey stood out to you the most. And before you go, watch the recommended videos on screen. They'll help you go even deeper into this mindset of calm, self-respect, and quiet strength.